Hello, everyone. Welcome into Living with Intention Live. I am April Wyatt, and I am your host for this amazing conversation that we're going to have today. I'm really grateful that you're here because this discussion is one that I have been looking forward to for months as I've connected with both Dave and James. And it's because being a somatic practitioner, I've always been curious about the body, right? And how it carries long after the experience has passed. And most of the people that I work with or talk to rarely say, I'm carrying something from 4 years ago. They don't even understand that it's from that. And it's more they come because they're feeling heavier, because maybe their relationships feel different and they can't quite explain why they no longer feel like themselves. Now, that's the weight of the caring. So as we begin to slow down and create space to listen, we often discover the conversation isn't really about today. It's about the experiences that we've never fully understood and that are quietly carrying that weight and that continues to shape the way we live and lead and how we relate to ourselves. And I want everybody to hear this. The caring isn't good or bad or right or wrong. It's just how our nervous system and our bodies have adapted to protect us. It's a protection from that. And the remarkable thing is, I hope that you're hearing me right now, is that the body never stopped communicating to us, right? It's simply holding and waiting for there to be enough space for us to listen. And that's why I invited our amazing guests. Just a little bit about Dave Roberts. He has spent decades helping people navigate one's life deepest experiences, such as grief, and not by asking people to move beyond it, but by helping them to understand how loss continues to shape the way we live, love, and move forward. And James Kawauni, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, brings generations of Hawaiian wisdom through his practice of Pono. And his work reminds us that pain isn't something to fear or avoid, and that it can become a guide in pointing us towards greater balance, integrity, and a deeper understanding of ourselves. And although James and Dave's paths are a little different, what connects us, the three of us, is that shared belief, is that the experiences we carry, they just don't simply disappear because time have passed. It's about how we're noticing the weight that we're carrying and how that affects our communication, how we relate to others, and most importantly, the relationship with ourselves. As many of us have learned to keep performing, keep going, quietly carrying all that weight, far more than anyone realizes us that we're doing that, right? We're very, just hold it and don't share, don't show the weakness, don't show the grief. And that is actually where we need to lean in and listen. So, speaking of leaning in and listening, I have an amazing experience. If those of you who have been leaning in and listening to what I do with Bali, and my Bali experience is coming up in October 10th through the 17th. And this space was created for us to lean in and listen, to connect with ourselves. And I call it so that we can pause here and rise above the noise. There's so many distractions in our lives, so many things happening in the world. We tend to get out of ourselves. We are very distracted, maybe even fragmented. from all the things happening. And when we can give ourselves space to lean in and listen, that's when we're able to connect with ourselves. It's a beautiful sanctuary of support, a real human connection. And this is where we remember that we are the ripple effect. So in this Bali experience, we are going off property as well. So not only are we experiencing in the container of the retreat Osho meditations, that's movement meditations, breath work, it's a connected breath work, getting back into our bodies, really revitalizing our nervous system, and having other amazing experiences connecting with other people in the group, but also going off property and visiting the culture of Bali. That is something when you can just immerse yourself in a different culture, that's where you can remember, the aliveness of life. And that helps us to open up even more. So if that's something that you're interested in, please DM me. I just have a few spots left. And I would love to see you in Bali and be part of that sanctuary of support. And speaking of sanctuaries of support, I'm always promoting the Hounds of Business because it is a community for professionals. And that's Mike Asherbranner, the founder, and he talks about trust first, right? Leaning in, connecting with other amazing professionals, and building that connection to where you receive warm leads and connections, and that really amplifies that ripple effect, who we are. So it's not about, as Mike Asherbranner says, like pitch slapping, sales, or anything like that. It's really getting to know the members of the Hounds of Business and being part of that community. And also part of that community is Jennifer Thompson, who I see in the audience here. Hello, Jennifer. Thank you for tuning in. And she and her sister, Yurida, is the founders of I Am Magazine. So this is an amazing magazine that's international, that really does amplify people's stories. And it's knowing that when we have a story, to share, people then can relate to us, right? Every accomplishment is a human experience that really has shaped our person, our being. But these stories also have the power to create connection and offer hope and remind us that we're never alone, even if that's what we believe ourselves to be, is alone. So I highly recommend scanning that QR code. It's a free magazine and it's also bilingual. They have a Spanish edition as well. And the gentleman there in the middle, that's Curtis Rivers, who is part of the Hounds of Business, and he's an amazing soul. So if you're curious about that, DM me or connect with Jennifer Thompson, who is in the chat, and just learn more about others. And so speaking of learning more about others, I want to bring up our guests to chat about the weight of high performance and what we've been carrying here. Yeah, welcome in, Dave and James.
I'm just going to make one small correction. It's Kauai Nui.
Thank you. Kauai Nui. Thank you. I knew you would correct me.
Yeah, but when you come on my podcast, James, I'm just going to say James K, because I'm sure I'm not going to be able to say your last name correctly.
James K, I like it. Yes, we need to, just keep it simple, right? Just keep it simple. Well, thank you both for accepting my invitation to be here today to talk about, the weight. And, on a personal note, I just want your reflection because this will help others to understand you and where you've come from noticing that weight. So, can you think of a time in your life when you realized that you've been carrying more than you realized? Really, you acknowledged, and what really helped you begin releasing some of that weight? I know you both have powerful stories. Uh, James, do you mind going first?
No, not at all. And my story, I would say, is not a usual one. And it doesn't connect to actually what I do now. Um, Years ago, over 25 years ago, I was executive in a multi-million dollar a year corporation. I had three departments that I was in charge of, answer to the president of our division, and I was living the life that I thought that I wanted. And over the course of doing that over several years, I started to get a little bit burned out. I didn't pay attention to that. I actually kept going. I kept pushing. And there was this place inside me because it was coming from this place of wanting to be appreciated, needing to be appreciated. And what ended up happening is I hit a wall, and everything changed at that point. And a wall, maybe not like anybody else have had experience, but I was at home one Friday evening, sitting on the sofa and reflecting on my 60-hour-a-week life. And I had something happen to me that I'd never had before, and they call it a clairaudient experience, but something else. I literally had somebody reach up and tap me in the back of the head, and I heard a voice that said, "It's time to go home." And it was the first experience I've had of direct communication with my ancestors. And I looked at my wife at the time, and I said, "What the F are we doing here?" And she said, "I don't know." And long story short, I walked into my boss's office the very next day, and I quit my job, and I walked away. And I realized that there was something that was there. I did not understand it back then. This connection that I have to my lineage, and Hawaiians call it your kupuna, my ancestors. And the last 25 years has been both a journey of understanding that, the journey of looking at the pieces in my life that had held me back, and now being able to take that and share that information and that knowledge with other people.
Yes, that's an amazing experience that you had, and that for you to have the wherewithal to even recognize it for what it was,
It's
right?
not, I would say that it's not the way that I would tell people to make changes in their life.
Well, there's a breaking open, right? And kind of it that happens, and then remembering that we have a choice, and yeah, can seem a little messy, right, at first, but you trusting it seems like there was a lot of trust in that, following your ancestors.
In the beginning, it wasn't trust, it was just gut instinct that said, and it was a place that I think we all come to that says, I can't do what I'm doing the way I've been doing it.
Mhm.
And most people try and push through, and it leads to lots of different things. And we can continue that conversation as we go through. And yet at the same time, there's that when do I start trusting my inner knowing? And I think that that's a really big, it can be or should be part of this conversation as well.
Thank you for that, James. Yes. And Dave.
Oh, I see Mike.
How
Thanks,
about you?
Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike.
Mike's in here. Yeah.
So it's my turn.
Yes, it is.
Wow, I don't know if I could follow up with that. I mean, I'm really going to have to really outdo James at this point. I was just kidding, but just to dovetail off of his point that change occurs not when the good stuff's happening to us, but it's usually as a result of challenge. And I wish I could have avoided some of the challenges in my life to promote the insight that I have now. But as I've learned, we don't have any control over the challenges that we encounter in this lifetime. It's how we respond to it. But there's 2 points that I'm going to give you, and these are both connected. The first point, which was really significant for me, and I've always told my students at Utica University, early experience matters. And when I was 5 years old, my father abandoned me and my mother. My mother raised me as an only child. I never saw my father again. That was the first loss I had on two levels. One, it was a symbolic loss. It was a loss of a father figure. It was a loss of the family as I was hoping to grow with both of my parents. I found out when I was 14 that he died in a car crash when I was 11, and I carried a lot of anger. I carried a lot of resentment. My mom was very overprotective of me. I resented her for that, and I think as I got older, I carried that with me. And I think I've looked in hindsight is that I think those early experiences affected, I think, the way I parented early on as a father, and I think it affected the way I saw the world very unconsciously in a lot of ways. But at the age of 60, due to pure serendipity, I met a relative, a cousin on my father's side of the family, who gave me context of my father's history. He had a history of generational trauma, which was characterized by alcoholism, mental health concerns. When the males in the family were requested and were demanded for emotional attachment, they just picked up and left. And that's what happened with my father. Um, my father couldn't change his history. He couldn't outlive his history. He couldn't outwork his history. He didn't have the resources to do that. And at age 60, I realized that the greatest gift he gave me was the ability to let go. And I came to that conclusion that he did so not out of anger, not out of the fact that he didn't love me, but he wanted to see me grow and he was going to get in the way of that. So that was the first thing. At age 60, I was able to look at my past and make peace with my father. I was also able to make peace um, with my mother's overprotectiveness due to a great shamanistic holistic practitioner that I went to who helped me connect the dots. And we were talking about this earlier in terms of connecting the dots. 2 consecutive sessions. The first session, I told her, I said I was angry at my mother for overprotecting me. The second session, she did a soul journey with me. And what came up was she saw a young boy at the age of 4 and his father in Egyptian times. The chariot overturned, killing the 4-year-old boy. Now this is going to get to the next part. Okay. I'm a parent who's experienced the death of a child. That's the other part of this. And also the learning that I've done for the challenges that I've experienced as a result of my daughter Janine's transition from the physical world to the spiritual world has helped me come to terms with my ancestral baggage that I've been carrying. The second, she did the soul journey, and then I got this connect the dot thing. It was like an aha moment. I said, what if I in that lifetime was a child that died? And my mother and father were in that lifetime. My father, to overturn the chariot, my mother wasn't there to protect me. And I also am a firm believer in soul contracts. And I think we come in with a specific contract in this lifetime. So what if my mother and I contracted, our souls contracted, that she was going to overprotect me no matter what, even if it just really angered me, period. And it helped me make peace with that. It helped me make peace with both my mother and my father. So both of those events, but it all stemmed because of my daughter's transition after having cancer at the age of 18, 10 months after she gave birth to her only child. And it was all of that put me on a course at age 47 to question, who am I? What's my world going to look like? Do I even want to live in a world without my daughter? All of the ups and downs with that and all of the cognitive restructuring that I had to do of my world caused me to take a look at everything that happened to me in the past. And I think Kierkegaard said it best. I think he said life is best lived moving forward, but best understood backwards. And that's really what I had to do to put things in perspective and re-engage in a world that was totally different after my daughter's passing.
It's an interesting thing, Dave, because in some ways, you laid the groundwork for a lot of things and the similarities that you and I have, because there was abandonment in my life as well. There was also a lot of abuse when I was growing up. And this is really important, I think, for people to talk about or to really understand, is that it's those formative years, is that place that all those patterns were put in place. And so then what happens is the rest of our lives, until we get to a point, if we get to a point that we recognize those patterns, are those patterns getting relived over and over and over again. And so it's watching how that happens, and talking about anger, right? Realizing at 48 years old that the only person that my anger was actually continuing to affect was me. And that was a powerful place when I got to that. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the choices that I made in my life because of the anger. And so there were choices, and not all of them were good. And inside of those choices, they were the things that were driving me to push, to want to be recognized. And how many people that are in positions of power in business, it's their little boy that really, or their little girl that is actually driving. I call it they're driving the car. We're sitting in the back seat. My little boy is driving the car. He's in complete control of everything that's going on. And I don't even know or recognize that that's happening. And so when we have conversations like this, and we start looking at that, and when we work with people like Dave and like with April, what we're doing is we're looking at where we are now and going, wait a minute, I am here. And what are the things that are happening here? And how is this impacting all of that? And there's a place of going, okay, am I brave enough to go back and look at that? Because we spend most of our lives burying that as much as possible. And the thing about it is, with unconscious patterns and with patterns in general, we hit something that's not even feels like it's related, right? And it trips all the doors inside of that. And then before we know it, we're going down the road and we're watching that video again of the thing that happened to us when we were 4, when we were 1, or when I was 8 months old, and my mother gave me up for adoption to my grandmother. You know, even though it wasn't my grandmother, it didn't matter. It was that disconnect. And so those kinds of unconscious places where there's disconnect and loss of I guess you could say love. And so, and here's a question to ask everybody: how many of us are just chasing love?
Yes, that's a really good, yes, let's get into that. But I want to bring it back to what you both had just brought forward, is old wounds, whether a person believes in past lives or right now, it's still tethered to us. And until we have a moment to really sit down and understand and untangle that, it's kind of like it's all kind of knotted up, and you got to find the end of that thread. And once you start untangling it, right, it's not so tight anymore. It gets a little expansive, and you can kind of see a little bit more, right, as you are unraveling that knot there.
I like the metaphor, because that's what we do. We're untangling knots.
We are. We really are.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's in our minds, in our bodies, in our energy, everything that creates this container of who we perceive ourselves to be in this moment, in this time. And it's a beautiful, messy learning. This is where we get the golden nuggets. This is where we understand more about ourselves and bring in that forgiveness for ourselves first and foremost, and that love that you talked about, James. That's all that we've always wanted in our lives, is to be accepted and receive that unconditional love and support without judgment.
And we chase that for lifetime sometimes.
Yes. And I see Dave. Dave is kind of leaning forward into.
Well, I just had something, that James was talking about, that kind of, a couple of things. One is, we do a lot of things unconsciously. Even, we may consciously suppress things that are uncomfortable for us. And I think when they come into unconscious awareness, one of the things that it becomes uncomfortable because we weren't aware that we were doing in the first place. And I used to work with individuals who had addiction issues, and defense mechanisms were a big part of their, of the way they looked at the world. And so I used to do a structured exercise where I'd give them a list of defense mechanisms in a group, have them identify the defense mechanisms that were most common to them, that they were told that was most common to them. There's a lot of anxiety in the beginning, and I had to normalize that for them, because once we bring something from the unconscious into the conscious, we become anxious because we've been trying for so long to suppress that. But the other thing is, there was just something that came to me as James was talking. It's an old Lakota, I think, saying. It was said in a Lakota elder, and I found this in a book by Kent Nurburn called "Wisdom in the Stones: Life Lessons in the Native Way." And I always think about this when people say, "Well, why did this happen to me?" Or, why did this happen to somebody else? Or why did God choose me? And so one of the things that I always think of is what this Lakota elder had to say is that life isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's a mystery to be honored. And I think once we honor the mystery and all that's a part of that, we don't have to understand it, but we have to honor it, because it's not only the good stuff that makes us, it's the negative stuff that also makes us as well too. I mean, we take a look at individuals who are in early recovery. We ask them to take a fearless moral inventory of themselves. You know how tough that is for somebody who's in addiction to take a look at? Well, you got to look at what you did well, but you also got to look at who you hurt. And if we don't give them the basic skills to do that, they're going to be set up for relapse. And under normal circumstances, it is tough for us to look at the totality of who we are because of the emphasis in society on being super positive and super happy. Well, I can tell you something. I don't hang around with happy people, totally happy people. I hang around with individuals who, if James came to me and I said, "Dave, James, how was your day?" He goes, "Dave, my day sucks." Well, we could have a great conversation because he's being genuine. I don't know if anybody's ever happy 24/7. They'll tell you they are, but they're in denial of experience and the spectrum of their emotions, which can give them rich teachings about themselves. If I didn't experience sadness, I wouldn't be compassionate. If I didn't experience anger, I wouldn't have learned how to rechannel that anger. Or I'm happy for the gift of my anger, because as long as it wasn't destructive, it gave me the energy to get through a real tough moment. So there's everything that happens to us internally and externally is in service to us. And as long as we can understand that, we can continue to grow through challenge, and that can help us, I think, bury the weight of expectations based on who other people think we should be.
Yeah, good point. And I don't know if you guys want to go down this road or not, but part of this is having a look at how much of this is genetically driven. Because from a genetic standpoint, right? If we look at this, we are hardwired to move away from pain.
Yes.
That really is what happens. Anytime there's pain, and it doesn't matter if it's emotional or physical, there's rarely a place where we lean into it. And so we spend most of our life distracting ourselves from pain, and distracted physical pain turns into illness and turns into disease. We already know that. It's been proving over and over and over. So the invitation here, and this is, I would say, the crux of self-inquiry, but also about transformation, is that it gets ugly and it gets messy, and you got to want to get dirty.
Yes.
I'm not even going to talk about you. I'm going to talk about just myself. Am I ready to look at those hard places? Am I ready to lean in here and face the pain? Because sometimes, and this is what I found out in the past, sometimes when you face the pain, it's not very deep. I had a teacher once that says that we keep looking at everything thinking that it's an inch wide and a mile deep. And what happens if actually it's a mile wide and an inch deep? And so to be able to step into that place where we look at it, and then we get to ask the questions. Wow, I'm feeling this pain. Is this me? Is this somebody else? And then is this something that I inherited through my lineage? Is this something that the soul brought in? Because anytime we do work like this, and I think both of you agree, it really is multidimensional. And so nothing is ever linear here. We have to remember that our linear world is only exists in our mind. And everything else that we're looking at is really from this holographic place, so that we're looking at things and we're always looking at how it affects not just my life, my family, my business, who I am as a person, what I share and give to my children, who will pass it on to their children too. So in a lot of ways, transformation then becomes a sense of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Oh, mic drop on the personal responsibility. Yes, because it's shown, generational trauma. It is
Well, I work with that every day with people.
And
how we all do.
Yeah, how we have these patterns or stories, I would like to say. I've worked with so many people and myself. I notice the BS, the belief system that I carried within myself of, oh, because of my father, blank. Oh, because of my grandmother was this way, that's why I'm that way. Or, the stories that we carry forward. And there's power in the words that we speak about ourselves.
Absolutely.
How we see ourselves. And that is a continuum for future generations. And as we see ourselves and take that responsibility, as you said, James, and both Dave, it is hard to look in the mirror and say, oh, wow, this is mine. No one can. Yes, this happened in the past, and I see it. Can I accept it? I think the acceptance opens the door, and then we can learn how to release that weight, as we're talking about, right? The weight of high performance that keeps us going. We avoid, we don't want to feel, or we think the performance is what's going to get us somewhere, get us to the happiness, get us to abundance or what have you. But it's really going in, looking at ourselves in a different way, asking questions to where then we can learn more about ourselves in the process. Dave, I saw you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say we're rebels because we're actually even looking at our lives like this. So it's an interesting thing to think of ourselves as rebels, because we're wanting to step into this, and that goes against the collective consciousness and everything that everybody knows. So
it's that collective consciousness thread, right? And people are probably tuning in going, April, what are you talking about? These multi-dimensions, past lives, all this. It's all energy. And wherever you go, there you are. That's all I have to say. Just thinking of it that way. Dave?
Well, there's a couple of things too. I mean, we're a pain avoidant society in a lot of ways because, pain isn't anything that anybody wants to experience, but, pain demands to be felt. Pain demands to be honored. We need to kind of wallow in the muck of our despair before we can wallow through it. And the only way we're going to do it is to let pain be a teacher. Period. The other thing, I think Jen Thompson had mentioned something about, meeting other people's expectations. And I'm paraphrasing this, Jen, so I'm sorry because I forgot the full context. Trying to fill other people's expectations is the most draining thing that you can ever do. And it really is. Because if you live life through the eyes of somebody else, there's a high price to pay for failure because you're worried about being judged, and you're going to try to achieve perfectionism just so you can avoid being judged. And perfectionism is an illusion because nobody's perfect. I mean, I've had individuals that got a 99% out of 100 on an exam, and they were ruminating over the one question they got wrong. So I remind them of Don Miguel Ruiz as one of his 4 agreements. Always do your best, and your best can be different depending on what's occurring with you at the present time. So those were 2 things that I wanted to mention before I forgot.
Those are survival strategies that are also genetic, though, because we are predispositioned to look for worst case scenario.
Yep.
Our brain is designed that way. That's what helped us survive for millions of years.
Yep.
And so when we hit that place, that's really what we're doing. And for most people, they live their lives that way because what are we thinking, and what is the mind saying? What is the absolute worst thing that I can do, that can happen to me? Let me plan for that.
Yep.
And so our lives just become this place of constant survival strategies of the worst thing that can happen to me. I mean, I know that both of you have had conversations with people lots and lots of times where that's what they're looking at, and you can see that inside of the way that they're talking to you. They're talking to you from this place of, but this is going to happen, but this is going to happen, but this is going to happen. And so I laughed because it was a few months ago, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and excuse me, I'm going to be a little bit, there's profanity here.
Going to be colorful?
It's colorful. I will say it's colorful. I looked at myself and I said, James, you're 68 years old. When the F are you going to be okay just being who you are? And then I started laughing at myself because I realized all the things that I had been doing to prevent myself from that. And am I there yet? Hell no, I'm still practicing. And I think that's part of the journey, is recognizing and coming back to it over and over.
Yeah. And oops, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one thing that I saw that the Hounds of Business, he said, I think a mentor told them that, if you got 70% on a test, you still pass. So I tell my students, nobody's going to ask you what you got on a death, dying, and bereavement exam. Nobody's going to ask you what your GPA was in college. What they're going to want to see is a degree. They're not going to give a crap about that you got 75 out of 100. You passed and you got your degree, period.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you bring to the table? So I try to really impress with my students. Do your best. Give it 100%. You're not going to be perfect, but as long as you do your best, you're going to be fine. So, so but I mean, we are victim of the expectations that we place on ourselves because of others' expectations of us. And those individuals may not be actually accurate evaluators of who we are. We've talked about going within. Only the answers that we have about life lie within us anyway. And we need to go within to seek that and follow a moral code that fits us. As long as that code is based in integrity, it's based in compassion, it's based in understanding. It's all that matters. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So,
and yes, exactly. And talking about the messiness of, if you have been under the impression, like James said, here I am 60 years old and, reinventing myself kind of thing. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to figure it out, to know what feels better to you, what suits you. You might not know in the very beginning, and that's okay. I think that's another pressure that people place on themselves. I don't feel comfortable where I'm at, whether it's in their career, in a relationship, whatever's happening in their lives, and they want the change, but it's that resistance of taking that step because of the uncertainty of wanting to see a clear path. I am so sorry. I'm going to tell you right now, there is no clear path. And that's the beauty of it, because you discover yourself along the way, along the journey. I had a breaking open moment when my husband retired from the Navy. He was going to retire, and he said, guess what? We're moving back to Iowa. I was like, Iowa? The winters are horrible there. We'd lived there for a brief amount of time when he was recruiting, and it wasn't the best time for me. But you know what I did? I prayed for the highest good for myself and my family. And when I received the news, and this was after my Reiki training, Dave, I had been sending Reiki, I'd been sending prayers and everything for the highest good for my family. And when that thought came in of, what the heck, why Iowa, like the resistance, then it was like a knife cut through my thoughts. And I heard, you prayed for the great intention, the highest good for your family. And I said, that's right. There's
Mhm.
something there that I don't know, and I'm going to trust in this. I'm going to be curious of where this is going to lead me. And guess what? I got a free ride at Drake University. I was on the dean's list. I had a 3.8 GPA. I did not even realize that I would love going back to school and learning and expanding and grow. And then that led me to another thing, just being curious. Where is this going to take me versus I need to do it this way? It has to look like this. And it's the trusting in myself. That's what I learned, to trust more in myself and leaning in and listening. And it's just those subtle glimpses that we get. Everybody gets them. I know everyone listening or watching right now, you've seen the signs or you've had that gut intuition and things came forward, things came to fruition. So that's what I'm talking about here too. Easing that weight of the performance and discovering more about yourself. You don't have to carry so much.
Mhm.
You can flow with a little bit more ease and trust in life. Yeah.
The opportunity is to follow it when the gut comes, because we discount it.
Yep.
And that
Yes.
really is. And then I want to go back to something else that you said, April, because you were talking about making mistakes, right? Again, if we go back to genetics, you know what they call that? They call that evolution.
Mm.
And and that's what we do, right? So again, if we start breaking things down and we put it and create basic understandings. The genetics inside of us says that we learn from repetition, but we also learn from mistakes. And that's how we evolved. That's how the body evolved. That's how our spirit evolved. That's how we evolve as people. So realizing that mistakes, and we call them mistakes, but really, let's look at it this way. And I reframed this for myself so that I could step into a different way. I got to a place where I went, okay, wait a minute, let me look at the word and what the word's saying. And I realized what the word was doing, because it was bringing quote unquote negative energy in. And I said, okay, my reframe then came, oh, wait a minute, let me look at this from a place of curiosity. And the curiosity went, that didn't turn out quite the way you wanted to, did it, James? How about we look at a different way? And so just the energy of the reframe of that helped me to reframe what mistakes look like, because then mistakes became learning opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and just really quick, and not to plug for her, but there's a book, a really amazing book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And if you haven't read it, it talks about that. It talks about the place, about how we reframe mistakes or failure. And if we're talking about business and high performance business,
Mm-hmm.
it's really about the success or failure of a business is how we move through adversity.
Yep.
And so talking about where adversity is inside of your business, and looking at something and either being really stubborn and driving it through this place where it's going to fail, but I have to be successful at it, or being able to step back and go, this isn't working. We got to find a different way here. And a lot of times the success or failure of a business comes down to the leader of that business being able to make those kinds of decisions.
Yep. I mean, mistakes are just opportunities for improvement. If we look at it that way, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
And you mentioned, at 68 years old, you're still trying to figure stuff out. At 71, I'm still trying to figure stuff out. So, it's just, I tell my students I'm a work in progress, and I value myself as being a student as well as a teacher. And I tell my students I'm never too young to learn from you, and hopefully I'm not too old for you to learn from me. But I haven't got it all figured out. But I think at this stage of the game, I understand what still needs to be done, and I'm continually working on that and not apologetic about it, because it turns out I didn't come into this life to live a perfect existence.
No, we don't want perfect, because then that's just vanilla. We need rocky road. We need some nuts and marshmallows, and we need depth.
Yep.
Otherwise we're just skimming the surface. I'm an advanced scuba diver, so I've noticed when, and it's not right or wrong at all, no judgment, but I notice when people are snorkeling, right? They're above, they're looking down and just taking it easy and kind of snorkeling on the surface and, thinking, oh, that would be nice, but they keep going on. And then there's people that are willing to take that deeper dive. You got to get the equipment on. You got to check your air. That's very important.
Yep.
You got to have a dive buddy.
Mhm.
That'll be there for you. And
that's a really important point. You need the right equipment.
Yes.
That's brilliant, actually, to look at that, because that's what it takes. And the right equipment might be processes or techniques. It might be working with someone.
Yes.
Right? So,
that's exactly right.
That's the right equipment.
Exactly. And then we build more confidence, right? You get into the water and it could be a little scary, unnerving, and like, I don't know where I'm going or how is this going to work out? And then once you get a few dives in, then it's like, oh, I can breathe better. I'm going to focus more on how I'm flowing in the water versus checking my air every time. So having that equipment, just as I was getting at, James, having that support, those resources, people like Dave and James here and myself, being able to walk with you and just guiding. So I say that I'm like the scarecrow in the old Wizard of Oz, right? Dorothy's skipping down the yellow brick road. She comes to the fork and there's the scarecrow and she says, which way to go? And he said, well, you can go that way or you can go this way. I don't have the answers, but I can guide you and give you a little bit more depth, give you that equipment so you can dive a little deeper and learn how to connect with your body, trust in this beautiful resource in somatics, and ease that tension and really understand how your body's working for you. And that way you can have that better relationship with yourself. So I know that both of you have amazing things to offer. I want to give us time for that and then share a little, give you time to tell people where to connect with you. But first, Dave, I met with you through, was it Steve Ramona?
It was Steve Ramona. Yep.
Shout out to Steve. Thank you, Steve, for this beautiful connection. Yes.
Yeah, Steve's an amazing person.
Yes, he's a super connector.
He
great,
is a
great
super
podcaster.
connector.
He's got a heart of gold.
Yeah.
He is. And I met Steve Ramona through Mike Ashebrander with the Hounds of Business. So this is how it works, right? When you're curious and you want to connect with other people, then it just leads you. You never know who you're going to meet and all that. So Dave, tell us a little bit about your podcast that you have and how you support people and your teachings there through the podcast.
Well, the Teaching Journeys podcast, first episode dropped on March 31st, 2023. So I've been doing podcasting now for a little bit over 3 years. We're set to drop our 300th episode mid-August.
Congratulations.
Thank you. If anybody told me I'd be at 300 episodes when I first started, I probably would have been a little skeptical, but as I know, the universe always has a better plan than me. And it's grown because, people like you, April, and Steve, and other individuals that I love dearly have sent some great guest contributors to me, and it's just grown, and I'm very grateful for that. The mantra of the podcast is we're all students and teachers, so let's learn from each other. So I've had individuals that have been on that have transcended trauma and are willing to talk about their journeys and what they did and offer some teaching points to individuals in my audience who are struggling with what challenges or want to improve the quality of their lives. But we've since expanded that focus. It's gone beyond grief. I've had business coaches on. I've had holistic practitioners on who also work with individuals with challenge or just share what they've learned in business that could help others improve the quality of their lives. So it's a fun platform for me. I've met a lot of people all over the United States and the world, and it's just been great. Um, the philosophy is I try to create a real safe platform. I'm not performative. I ask a question to stay the heck out of your way so you can answer it, and
Yes.
then there's some organic conversation that goes on. But two of my very lovingly pain in the butt students ran me for a year to do a podcast. And they wanted me originally to say, you need to take the teachings from the death, dying, and bereavement classroom, because I teach death, dying, and bereavement at Utica University, bring it to the podcast world.
Mm.
And then the universe kind of opened up, and anybody I met that wasn't a student said, Dave, you ought to do a podcast. You ought to do a podcast. So I looked up at this guy, and you want me to do a podcast? Okay. So just when I think I have a plan, the universe says, hold my beer. Here's mine. So, you know, um, so I've learned to follow that. I've learned to surrender to that. But it's been a great. We're on YouTube now,
Yes.
and about 17 different podcast platforms, Apple and Spotify. So I'm excited.
Wonderful. And it is a wonderful platform. I was a guest on your teaching journeys too. And it's just a great conversation and really, allows us to go a little deeper with things. And I love how you just leave it as an open mic too. It's so important, Dave. So while I have you up and you're chatting, can you tell people where to go to connect with you? I think it's really important.
Well, my son calls me the world's oldest millennial, so you can find me on just about any social media: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. It's at David Roberts 301. 301 is March 1st is the date of my daughter's transition. It was March 1st, 2003. So that's the moniker for that. Um, you can follow me on Apple, Spotify. So you can find me there. My website is, you have it up, as davidrobertsmsw.com. That'll give you some more background about me, some past writings that I've done, articles that I've written. And email me. You can email me at bootsyandangel@gmail.com. And find me. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so people who are connected with me on LinkedIn or want to connect can find me there very easily.
Okay, thank you so much.
But thank you.
And James, just bringing you over. My StreamYard is a little wonky here.
Say, hey, and
there
Dave, Dave, I'm looking forward to being a guest.
Yes, I'm looking forward to having you.
Yeah. Yes. So, James, you have an amazing retreat coming up. Can you share a little bit more about this image? That's not you, James, but
that's
she's
not me,
beautiful.
just in case everybody was looking. So, for those of you, I'm just going to give a really quick plug. My wife's name is Ashana. She's a crucible artist and master crucible artist. And she's been a musician for 50 years and classically trained voice. And so this retreat came out of her journey of watching the places where our voices, I want to say, get taken away from us, because there are places and times in our life where people say things to us, and sometimes, and especially when we're when we don't feel confident and somebody says something, I know from me, in my experience, that I got quieter and quieter and quieter. And so this retreat is not just about your voice and your song, but it's about looking at the places and the deep places inside where those stories are still holding us back. And how do we move through those obstacles, I'm going to say emotional, mental, spiritual obstacles, so that we can actually become the person that we know that we are inside, and be able to tell the world in such an amazing way, this is who I am. And so that's really what this retreat is about. And it's an intimate retreat. We keep it small so that we can actually work with each of the individuals. And it's literally in my backyard. So if anybody's interested, please reach out. There's a link that's going to be there that April will share, or you can just reach out to me at james@jameskawaiinui.com, and I will put you in touch with and send you a link for that retreat. So.
Yeah. So tell us again, I missed that option of yes, showing your link there. Yeah. So if you could say that again.
Yeah, it's James at James Kauai Nui. And really, again, really quickly, Hawaiian is very phonetic. And so if you break everything down into syllables, it becomes easier to see. So it's Kauai Nui.
Did you know that Japanese kawaii is cute?
Yes, I do. My wife and I have been to Japan many times to teach, and they always look at me and they laugh when they see my name.
Oh,
So it's a
that's
beautiful thing.
amazing.
I love Japan, and we actually just got invited to come back again. So that's something
Beautiful.
in 2027.
Wonderful. So yes, thank you so much to you, amazing, amazing men who know who they are and aren't afraid to go into those deeper spaces. I say that we're all stained glass windows. So when you are outside of a stained glass window, you know, outside the building, you can see that there's some etching, you know, there you can see that there's some picture in there, but it's not until you go inside of the building that you can see the beauty of the stained glass window and the light shines through, and we need all of the contrast pieces in there. So even though the glass is fragmented here and there, it all creates this beautiful stained glass window, and each and every one of us holds that within ourselves. So that's what I wanted to share at the end of this. And also I wanted to ask each of you about, you know, curiosity. We brought that up, right? Short, quick before we go. So if someone leaves today from watching now or in the future with just a little bit of curiosity, a little bit more curiosity about themselves, what do you hope they become curious about first? What do you hope that a person becomes curious about themselves first?
You want to go first, Dave? Go for it.
Yeah, for me, I think it's two things. One is I hope they become curious about themselves and realize that there's a work in progress. And I also, as I've gotten older, the past, I have to I look at my past frequently. And it isn't because I have any regrets. It's just, I think as I continue to evolve and grow, my past represents to me differently. So it demands that I look at it, and it demands that I take a look at my past and say, okay, how can I use what I'm learning now to help me at this point in my present? So that's the first thing. The second thing is be a skeptic, not a debunker. Don't be afraid to explore things that are outside of your comfort zone, that are outside of your core beliefs, because examine it. Examine any type of phenomena that may not fit with your core beliefs, but at the same time, be open to perspectives that are different than your core beliefs that you can use to incorporate and expand your belief system. Not substitute your core beliefs, but expand it. So stay curious in that way. Always, and that develops your critical thinking. So those are the two things that I'm going to leave you with curiosity.
Okay, James, what do
I
you
say
hope
amen
somebody?
to that. I say amen to that, Dave. So if there's two things, and I know that we didn't talk about this a lot, but the two things that I like, I always hope that people take away when I get to share with anyone is one is that you walk away and that you have a little bit more compassion for yourself.
Yep.
That gentleness and that kindness toward yourself, you know, that we get tripped up on the self-judgment. And I say this to people, if all you can do is watch the self-judgment and not drop into it when you realize something about yourself, change will happen. And then the other piece that I would say for everyone that kind of goes along with this is be aware of your words, how you describe yourself, how you describe the world around you. As you become more aware, and you start to recognize the words that hurt or are painful or are contracting inside of your body, and you start to consciously change that, your life will change. And so if you take those two things away, besides everything else that you heard here today, you're on a path.
Oh, I love that. Yes, it reminds me of the 4 agreements, right?
Yep.
Be impeccable with your word. because as we speak, that is who we are. We're projecting that out. People receive that. That's energy. So love the curiosity. Thank you. Thank you both for being here today and shining your lights. And I hope that people reach out to you, James and Dave, and just want to learn more and lean in and listen for themselves. You both are amazing lights in this world. And this is why I wanted to bring you on and just spotlight you both, because you're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
Thank you, April. I don't know about Dave, but I think he said this. We're just works in progress.
Yep.
Yes. And we only know what we know right now. And, then we continue. It's amazing. It's fun. When we look at it that way, then we ease the pressure. I'm just getting ready to get ready to get ready. It's never going to be done. And isn't that fun?
That's embracing the journey.
Well,
Yes.
and that also helps us show grace to ourselves too, when we realize we're just works in progress.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you, friends. We're just a minute past. Thank you all who tuned
Bye,
in,
everyone.
who are watching in the past or the future, and keep living with intention. Be well.
Bye-bye.